Welcome back to the Nordic Game 2020 live stream studio. We are getting ready for our next speaker, but before that, I just want to remind you again that our Discord server, that's where it happens. That's where you want to go between watching me and Johan and all the speakers. You should really try to jump into the Discord server. There's plenty of people there. There's plenty of stuff to do. And most importantly, if you have questions for the speakers during the live stream, then you can go and ask them there. It's fairly easy to do so. You have to find the live stream category, the live stream chat, and in there write !question with a big Q, and then your question. So it will be picked up by either Johan and me, and we will act as moderators for the Q&As. And then if your question is really good, it will pass all the way through to the speakers. So let's get it on. Next speaker is Rosemary Lockhost. She's the CEO of Digging Deep Projects. Can we get into your head? Rosemary, are you there?
I think so.
Hello.
Hello.
Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm pretty well. I think there's a little bit of a delay, so that's if I take a second to answer, that's that reason.
Okay, that sounds horrible. Where are you? Are you on the other side of the world?
I'm based in Switzerland, and that's where I'm quarantined, so to speak, at the moment.
Oh my God. So it's like, I think it's a signal that has to pass through the cheeses, into the holes, up the mountains, and down into the chocolate to reach you.
Over the cows. Yep.
Oh yeah, thank you. That I forgot about that. So before you start your talk, I just wanted to mention that this talk is a part of the Nordic Game Impact Sessions. We started the Impact Sessions, I think, 3 years ago, and those sessions are being curated by Kate Edwards and Tsahi Lieberman. And the mission for us doing this is to put focus on games or people in the games industry that are working with games with a further scope than just making games for entertainment. And that is why I'm extremely happy that you are here, Rosemary, and we'll talk about some really important stuff, right?
Yes, we hope so. I'm very excited to be here.
So I will get the F off, but I would just say one thing. It's going to be Johan who's moderating the Q&A, and so then when you're done with your presentation, we can just open up and you can just say, let's get into the questions, and Johan will take it from there with you, all right?
Perfect.
Okay, I'm going to disappear and leave the stage for you.
Thank you, Jacob. Well, thanks everybody for joining me for this speech. Let's see if we can get the presentation going. It's a little bit early. All right, so I'll talk a little bit about our game, but mainly I really want to talk about, the situation, how we pivoted because of COVID, because when COVID hit, we suddenly had so much more to do than general. And I'll explain a little bit about that. But first, I will talk a little bit about who I am and just put it sort of in context where we play versus what other serious games are out there and what they do. And then I will take you through our case study, so explain what the game is in case you haven't seen it yet. And then also, of course, really just focus on what we did to address the need that came up so quickly because of what is happening around the world. And I'll share some lessons learned, both good and bad things of these last 3 whirlwind months that we went through. So who am I? I am not actually a gamer. I have a technology background, classic tech, so outsourcing, help desks, etc. Worked in Fortune 500 companies pretty much all my career until I joined the next part, which was our social media. Our social media before was more inspirational. Yeah, we did a lot of quotes, a lot of "you will be fine, hang in there" type of posts. Because we were focused a lot on chronic illness before this. And now that we were focusing on a lot more wider audience with any type of mental issue or stress or anxiety, emotional feelings, we really revamped our our social media, and made sure that the look and feel was a lot more alike. So on the right hand side, for example, with the World Health Organization, we published some figures around corona, some information really targeted at teens and young adults, because there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. These are neatly placed, and I think there's a screenshot later where you can see that, but these are neatly placed in billboards within the city, because Shadows Edge is a city, and so we have billboards in there. And so we worked with Starlight, with the World Health Organization, with Parents Helping Parents, to really look at what kind of information can we give within the game to help with what's currently going on. We also ran Q&A sessions, both within the game and also outside on Shadow's Edge. And we set up a webinar specifically for parents to help with our psychologists together, figuring out, how could they handle their teen. So one of the subjects, for example, that we did was how to help your teen during these COVID times and stay sane in the process. And we have guest speakers. The webinar we saw was really surprisingly popular. We thought we would have like 20, 30 people, but so far we've had up to like 300-400 people join just a single webinar. And then a lot of people requesting afterwards if they could have the link. So we work with partner organizations like Ronald McDonald's House, Storing Words, Parents Helping Parents, and others to really push that content out there. We do all of this for free. As I said, we're a nonprofit organization, so we just really want to make sure that we can help and that there's something out there for them. And then for the results, what we started seeing was really people from around the world were in the game really publishing more. So for one, this means that they were playing longer, because you only unlock Shadowgram in phase 2, which is disillusionment. So the new players that just downloaded really went on to play. We saw a lot more people actually finish the game as well, and we saw a lot more people publish on Shadowgram, not just to get the rewards, but they made some really, really cool stuff. I'm always amazed, because the one on the right would be more like I would do it. The Can't Wait is actually a font that we use, and then the rest is stickers. So that I could do. But something like the dragon, for example, which is part of our photo hunt, where we ask people to create coronavirus as a monster, I could not do that. We have amazing art in the game. We also started seeing that we got more comments. So whereas before people were publishing arts, as you can see here, you can have like comment sections below, and you can say why that you're posting this, or just say something simple about it. And we started to see that people were really more explaining what they were publishing than before Corona happened. And we started to see an increase in reactions. So you can favorite the art in the game. You can also, as you can see, there's different types of smileys in here where you can give a reaction. And so that's what we saw as well, more as well. So some of the outcomes were that, it was really confirmed for us. We had we did a study about a year ago where we looked at, what do young people talk about online? And we harvested 14 million conversations. And we saw, young people do want to express themselves online. They just don't know exactly how sometimes, and they could use a little help for the tools. We also work with the American Psychology Association, and they say that almost 30% of young people in that age group, so 16 to 24, actually say that they have at least had one depressive episode in that time. And 75% admit that they could use a little emotional help, but they just don't know where to turn to. And we also saw in the game that players wanted to help others. They wanted to inspire others. They wanted to bring positive messages. So the community actually grew in a positive way, where it really became inspiring, and there was a lot of support for others. It also showed us that one of the things that we weren't doing before was we really thought, well, we didn't think, but we kind of just we experimented. And in our thinking, the game is a tool, a self-help tool. It's there. This is what it is, right? And this really showed us that there is a need to really stay current, that the community is such a big part of it, and that it's really more about the content and really keeping the content fresh and changing things out. We also saw that there's, a positive impact on our game. So playtime went up. Part of that is, of course, because they're cooped up home. But also we saw more writing and sharing, which is something that is really helpful for your emotional health. And we saw that we had a lot of media interest. So we've had, articles, we've been on TV and all those kind of things. But honestly, that made absolutely no difference whatsoever on downloads. We did see that every time we had some kind of a media boost, that there was more impressions on the app stores, but downloads, not that much. What did have an impact on the downloads was people's reviews on the app stores, their engagement on social media with us. That actually did have an impact on it. And then the last but not least, the really great thing that came out of it for us was that partners started stepping up. So in the case, for example, of the Starlight Foundation, we have now started on a formal partnership. We just signed an agreement where we are bringing back the content for chronic illnesses and for teens and young adults that are really sick. And we're creating a specific version of the game. So what we're doing in there is it's the same game, but if you enter a Starlight specific code when you download it, you get slightly different content. You get some extra stickers and stencils that Starlight is providing, and then you get the questions from in the game, the journal pages that are more specific to things like medication, long-term hospital stays, therapy, all those kinds of things. And Starlight is one example. They're going to push it out to all of the 800 hospitals that they work with. But we've also been approached by like a grief organization, for example, for a specific content site. Because now with COVID, they've seen that we can change some of the content. It still remains the same game. And the process to use it as a tool for emotional wellness is still the same. But there's so much more that we can do with this game. And so that's something that is for us really, really positive that came out of this. We also had a lot more interest in people really wanting to blog for us, wanting to share their story, about anxiety, about depression, about COVID, about all kinds of things. So the engagement for us is another thing that really, really came out of it. And then lastly, one of the really positive things that came out of this for us is also some financing. So we're just creating a partnership with the UBS Foundation. They're going to match some of the funding that our founder has put in. They're also going to help us reach out to some of their high net wealth clients to see about donorships, about sponsorships that they can do. And we've also had the opportunity to apply for a few grants that are based really on COVID and on what's happening in the world. And so we've just recently gotten a smaller grant. I think it's about 50,000 and 2 grants actually in total, that is focused on the community space. So for the next couple of months, we'll continue to do this, and we will focus a lot on retention features that we're implementing, but also with the Dutch government together, we're going to be building out more of the community features, really making sure that people can actually comment back and forth, that they can chat to each other, that we, give more of a player progress. So that's the one thing. The second grant that we got is for cognitive behavioral therapy. So we are going to put more of these types of really exercises and challenges into the game and give the players a better mastery path through the game to really take those skills back into real life. So far, we put the players in control a lot so that they can just do it at their time, at their speed, at their leisure. But with COVID, one of the things that we have seen is that they actually do reach out and ask questions. They do want, to know, okay, what's the best way for me to do it? How do I get better? As one of our players told me, well, I have anxiety issues and depression, and sometimes I go to a really, really dark place, and I only have therapy on Thursdays. But what if I go to that dark place on Tuesday? It might be too late, and I might not get back from that. And so this is where for her, this is where the tool helps. Whereas other people are just saying, well, it just calms me down. I'm just in a stressed time. It distracts me a little bit. And then there's people who actually reached out and said, well, I've been starting to use this as a communication tool with my parents and my siblings because I'm learning things about myself. And I really think that they should know those too. And I think that's something that's really rewarding that we've been seeing in the last couple of months. So with that, those are some of the lessons that we've had. The last thing I think from a personal perspective that I will say is that I don't think I have been this busy since launch. The couple of months before launch are always busy, obviously, but these last couple of months, our whole team has pulled together, and we've done so much in such a short time. And so one thing that I can also honestly say is in times like these where there is a crisis and where you do have a game that may be able to help with that, just really be prepared for the onslaught, because the worst thing you can do is that people reach out, they're emotionally not feeling well, and then you don't have the time in your team to deal with the comments. You don't have the expertise maybe to deal with it. So we really rallied the psychologists that we have around us and our partners around us to be able to deal with that. That was something that's really important. And for more about those types of things and mental health resources, etc., I would advise tonight and tomorrow and the day after, our partner company called Take This actually has good sessions on mental health resources. They also posted some in the Discord channel, so I would go over there as well. And if you have any questions, then also obviously feel free to reach out to me as well. And with that, that would be my speech. And I'm not seeing the last slide, but that's only really our logo anyway. So thank you very much for listening in.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosemary, for delivering the speech. I was going to say that, delivering sounds like a weird thing, but letting us enjoy the speech is probably a better way of explaining it. So I have a few questions. I have some questions from the audience as well. But one of the things I would like to start with that I think that some people might be intrigued by is, what do you think is on the horizon in terms of for the self-help space? Because obviously self-help in the last 20 years or so in the physical arena has grown and become a huge industry. Lots of people being able to better themselves and understand themselves better in with the help of professionals and with books and with sessions and with coaches and yada and so on. Do you think that games, serious games, will see a similar type of explosion? Or what do you think?
I would hope so. There's a lot of self-care applications out there. Some of them call themselves games. Honestly, I wouldn't, because it's more gamified applications. I wouldn't say that if I do a breathing exercise and then I come back and I get a badge for it, for me, that's not really a game yet, right? I think we can do so much more with games to really make people understand what young people are going through. And just a little bit about the market. So if you take those numbers from the American Psychology Association that I mentioned, I looked up also some numbers on the World Health Organization. We do a lot of research, a ton. So it's almost a third of people in that age group of 13 to 24 that have issues with stress, anxiety, and that really could need some help. On the other hand, we are kind of stopping social emotional learning in, I think, probably around the age of 14. And so there's a gap. Adding to that is there's a treatment gap. A lot of patients people that do actually reach out for professional help, they have wait lists of 6 months even before they can start therapy. Now imagine you are suicidal and you're being told you have to wait 6 months, right? That's an extreme case. Obviously, if you're suicidal, you get on a much higher priority list, but still, I mean, it's dark. The other thing is that even if you then do get into therapy, these therapists don't really have that much time. So let's just do the math. There's 1.2 billion young people between the age of 10 and 24 in the world. If you say that 30% of those have some kind of issue that they actually could use some help with, that's 400 million people. So I think, yes, there's a lot of potential for games. I think the games, this is why we went into gaming instead of doing an application. It's where they're at anyways. It's something they're comfortable at. And there's so many things you could do in games to make it feel less like homework and really feel it like a world that they're immersed in, that suspension of disbelief, that freedom to experiment. So yes, I see a big growth. And I hope, even though they're then our competition in some ways, I hope there will be many more games out there to really help, because there's so much more pressure on young people nowadays to be great, to be perfect, faster, choose careers earlier. And all that pressure is actually having an impact, not only on our mental health, but also on our healthcare costs.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. As someone who's as best described as a good, bad example in many ways when it comes to self-care parts, I guess. But is there something with games in this space that you feel can't be done, or something that is definitely something that works better in the physical world, or are we able now with the technology that we have to completely transgress the barrier?
It's a great question, and I've never been asked that before, so it's a really cool one. I come from classical tech, right? And again, imagine I came from a startup where a group of 4 people said, we're going to change the way cities are built. We're going to be able to build cities within 2 years, full cities, and make them functional enough to weather the next 30 years and become sustainable. So I think anything can be done. It's just you have to find the right minds together to really innovate. So as an example of what we're trying to do now, there's these cognitive behavioral challenges. They're really focused on something physical, right? A lot of them. So for example, there's an exercise where you have to breathe 3 times really deep in and out. You breathe through your stomach. That's something that's difficult to do in a game. But we're looking with psychologists, can we simulate that? So can we, for example, within the game, while they're breathing, have them draw something, and then that drawing becomes the counter for breathing in and breathing out? Or is there a calming pattern that they can paint, and would that have a similar effect, for example? So I think there's ways around doing things. Obviously, you know, a lot of young people know how to take care of themselves physically, but mentally, they just don't know exactly what makes them feel better. And a lot of times it's really about educating them and making that known and having them connect to something that resonates with them, like characters in a game, for example. I think we can do much more with AI and with characters. And apart from that, we can do a lot also with bioresonance, right? And that, again, I came from the smart city side. That's what we did. We used bioresonance and biosensors, etc., for it. As we start getting better phones, we could read vital signs and see if they're breathing in and out via camera. You know, you can read pigments on your skin with the Philips Vital apps now already. There's so many more things that we can do, even with biomeasurements, just by the phone, not having extra devices, but really just with the phone, that we're just not tapping into yet. So I think there's a huge potential to really combine what you would do in a physical environment with what you do in games.
Nice. Yeah. No, I'm personally a big fan of biohacking and so on. So I'm always for more devices, not less necessarily. But it's good to have that perspective in there as well, and it's good to hear that there's, even if there's not necessarily already something in place, that the progress is being made. I spent some time in the startup scene as well, so I do believe that there are some brilliant minds out there that will sooner or later figure that one out. I got a question from the audience.
And maybe if I can add, so the thing that was really important to us, and I think that's why it's good that I didn't necessarily have a gaming background. We have a fantastic gaming studio called Little Chicken Game Company in the Netherlands, so they know what they're doing, right? So I didn't have to do all of that. But I think one of the things that I was really, really adamant about at the beginning is that it really has to be, safe from the beginning. It has to be scalable from the beginning. We have to at least have we can't block ourselves from later maybe wanting to gather data, maybe, to work with institutions to then harvest that data. We have to make sure that we build the game in a way that we can latch on to APIs to then maybe later on do these kinds of vital signs, or to do AI, for example, and really start seeing what do people journal about, and what are the themes, and how do we tap into that, for example.
It obviously becomes a question of balancing integrity and all that stuff, but that's what you do. That's part of the job. So I don't expect that to be an issue on your end. One thing that you mentioned a bit earlier there was that you have been doing a clinical trial, and something that popped into my mind at that point was, so normally with games we are used to have them dissected and figured out and parodied and worked on from either a consumer or a reviewer perspective, but it's always from a place of the end user or for fun. Working with medical professionals and working with researchers, and now they are the ones that are gonna try out your game and take it apart and try to figure things out. Is that a different experience?
Oh yes, absolutely. So it's there's smaller things like, let's take the characters, for example, in the game. They're blue, right? Now, there were some reasons that are classic American reasons. You can't have a white or a black character or a yellow one, right? For obvious reasons. They can't be too fat, they can't be too thin, they can't be etc. And then that comes to psychology. They can't be too tall because that might frighten the player off, right? They might not be able to connect with them. They have to wear certain colors to give that impression of which phase in the game that they're in. So in Disruption, for example, we use browns, oranges, and red because people tend to get angry first at their life being disrupted. They tend to just move forward and cope the way they were until that doesn't work anymore. And then they fall into this disillusionment, which is more of a depressive situation where some days you feel great, some days you don't. And so the psychologists really started dissecting it from that angle. Does it work psychologically? But if you level up, what if you then, what if you're in discovery and then you feel depressed again? You have to be able to walk back to disillusionment. You can't just, level up. You have to be able to go back down. Where do you put the psychological questions? Which ones make sense in which areas? How do you populate those areas? So we really worked on, for example, commercial is an area in the city where it represents your outgoing self. So it's what others people think about you and how you represent yourself to others. So there's lots of questions in there about communication, etc., for example. So the placement of that was very important, which then brings the question, well, what if the player never walks there? What if they walk the other way? How do you make that happen, that they actually have to go to certain places to do certain questions, but not others that they can skip? And so it really got dissected from a point where they looked at the glasses of the Guardian, the shoes, everything. And on top of the psychologists, we had over 250 teens working with us. Some of them had illnesses like cancer, Lyme disease, diabetes. We had a couple of people that had gender transformations. And so you get so much input from so many different people. It was actually quite a challenge to then make sure that we put the right things back into the game that kept it fun, but also made sure it was still a tool, right? Because it's still, that's what it is. It is a method of going through the process of dealing with something that happens in your life.
Beautiful. So we're going to wrap this up a little bit, yeah, quick-ish, I guess. If you want to and have the time, there are some good questions in the Discord for you waiting there.
Great. Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. And next up, in about 15 minutes or so, we will do a visit with Unity to check out how the new artist tools coming together during 2020. And yeah, thank you so much, Rosemary, for doing your talk. I'm sorry, I got distracted by seeing myself on a screen bowing. That's not necessarily the most usual thing in my life. Thank you.
Johan.
And I'll see you around, and hopefully next time in actual physical space.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll head to Discord right now.
Perfect. See you around.
Thanks everybody for listening in.